Hello everyone, my greetings to each one of you. This is the sixth session on indifference curve analysis. In the previous session, you have understood about the indifference curve. I am Poonam Vohra from Microeconomics Learning Center. In this session, you will understand the meaning and the diagrammatic presentation of indifference map. Let us begin. Now let us try to understand about how a consumer might compare different groups of items available for purchases. For that, let's take the example of two goods, food and clothing. The question is how the consumer decides how much food versus clothing he should buy. The consumer has limited income to be spent on two goods. He is faced with various combinations A, B, C, D and E. He may prefer different groups of two goods. One group is F1 and C1. Another group is F1 and C2. And yet another group is F1 and C3. Now the consumer may prefer F1C1 group, which represents various combinations to choose from. The consumer may opt for combination A, that is 10 units of food and 30 units of clothing, or B with 20 units of food and 20 units of clothing, or C with 30 units of food and 15 units of clothing, or D with 40 units of food and 10 units of clothing, or E 50 units of food and 5 units of clothing. The consumer is indifferent among all these combinations under this group because all these combinations give him the same level of satisfaction. By plotting these points, one gets a curve which is indifference curve 1. The consumer may prefer second group, that is F1 and C2, which represents various combinations of food and clothing, like for A, 10 units of food and 42 units of clothing, or 20 units of food and 32 units of clothing, or 30 units of food and 28 units of clothing, or 40 units of food and 21 units of clothing, or 50 units of food and 18 units of clothing. The consumer is indifferent among all these combinations under this group because all these combinations give him the same level of satisfaction. But this level of satisfaction is higher than the previous one, simply because here the units of clothing consumed is more, although units of food consumed is same. So by plotting the points of all the combinations under this group, one gets once again a downward sloping indifference curve and is termed as IC2. The consumer may prefer third group of food and clothing with various combinations once again and may opt for combination A, that is 10 units of food and 55 units of clothing, or option B, 20 units of food with 45 units of clothing, or option C with 30 units of food and 38 units of clothing, or option D with 40 units of food and 32 units of clothing, or option E with 50 units of food and 28 units of clothing. The consumer is indifferent among any of these combinations as these give him the same level of satisfaction. But this level of satisfaction is higher than the level of satisfaction derived from earlier two levels, simply because here units of clothing consumed is the highest among the three combinations. By plotting all the combinations of group 3, one gets a downward sloping indifference curve termed as IC3. A collection of several indifference curves shows different levels of satisfaction. Hence it is called indifference map, where higher indifference curve implies higher level of satisfaction, as IC2 gives higher level of satisfaction as compared to IC1, and IC3 represents higher level of satisfaction in comparison of IC2 as well as IC1. This can be explained by focusing on any combination. So let's focus on combination C. Now one can find that the units consumed of food is 30 in each case, but the units consumed of clothing is 15 in the first combination, 28 in the second group, and 38 in the third group, represented by points R, T, and W. And point W shows maximum quantity of clothing being preferred, and consumer gets highest level of satisfaction. This is monotonic preferences, as more is preferred to less. Also one can notice that two indifference curves do not intersect. Let's understand this point now. Two indifference curves can never intersect each other, simply because two indifference curves cannot represent the same level of satisfaction. To understand this aspect, let's have a look at the diagram here. This is indifference curve 1, and if indifference curve 2 is drawn like this, then at point K, both indifference curves intersect, which means that satisfaction from point K and point M on indifference curve 1 represent same level of satisfaction, as both are on indifference curve 1. Similarly, satisfaction derived from point K and point N on indifference curve 2 would also be same, as both are on indifference curve 2. If point K is equal to point M and point K is equal to point N, then M is equal to N, but M is not equal to N. It is not possible because they are on different indifference curves. Also, point K cannot give higher as well as lower level of satisfaction. Therefore, two indifference curves can never intersect. If they intersect, then one of the assumptions of consumer's theory is violated. According to this diagram, the consumer should be indifferent among combinations K, M, and N. Yet N should be preferred to M because N has more of both the goods. Now assess yourself and identify whether the following statement is true or false. Two indifference curves intersect each other when they represent same level of satisfaction. Please check your answer. This is a false statement, as two indifference curves which intersect each other can never represent same level of satisfaction. I hope you have understood the concept and the diagrammatic presentation of indifference map. With this, the session comes to an end. Next session would be on consumer's equilibrium through indifference curve analysis. Till then, keep reading and keep learning.